Hi, and welcome back to Small Caps. My name is Jess Holland, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Siobhan Lancaster, the Managing Director of Uranium Explorer 92 Energy. The ticker code is 92E. Hi, Siobhan. It's great to have you on the show.
Hi, Jess. Thanks so much for having me.
Great. So let's just delve straight in. So the company has achieved some really significant drilling success in a new program at its Gemini uranium discovery in Canada's world-class Athabasca Basin. Looking at the macro picture, the overall uranium market spot price is running higher at the moment. What do you think, Siobhan, is driving that surge?
Hi, well, that's a great question. And look, I think we really are at the beginning of a uranium bull market at the moment. It's absolutely spectacular what's occurred in the last month. And it's really driven by supply side issues at the moment. So we knew the market was getting tight. We've been talking about the fundamentals for a long time now. So the fundamentals are fantastic. There's a long-term growth outlook for nuclear. In fact, nuclear has never really been more popular than it is today because it really is a way that the world can decarbonize. But really what's driving this immediate rise in the spot price is supply side issues. So you would have heard that there was a coup in Niger, for example. That's obviously had an impact on the amount of supply that is potentially coming on the market in relation to those projects in Niger. And Niger, you know, they represent 20% of Europe's uranium. So it's quite a lot of uranium that currently is unable to move out of Niger. Of course, you would have heard Cameco, they put out some downgrades in their production as well. And Peninsula, of course, they've had some issues starting with their new mine or their restart of their mine in the US. So that's three in quick succession supply side issues that we're seeing. And I think that really gets the utilities back to the table thinking, well, gosh, we better make sure that we've got, our supply all tied up here because, a lot of that purchasing has already been done at the Cameco level. It's already been done at the Kazakhstan level. Really, the utilities are out there trying to work out how they can secure that supply. And of course, is driving the long-term contracting price. And you're seeing record amounts of contracting in the market at the moment. There's been over 120 million pounds contracted. That contracting volume always begets a rise in the long-term price of uranium, which then, of course, drives the spot price for uranium. So really, that's what we're seeing now. I think it has a long way to go. And I think any little supply side issue that we see going forward is going to drive it further. If spot re-enters into the market, that, of course, will drive the spot price as well. We know they've been back out in the market, but they haven't actually started purchasing yet. So they have $50 million available to purchase uranium. So that'll be really interesting when they turn that back on again.
Yeah, brilliant. I couldn't agree more, Siobhan. Now, talking about supply and potential solution, let's talk about the Gemini uranium project. So what is the significance of the new parallel structure that you've just discovered at your Gemini project?
Yeah, so look, we went out to the market with this program, and what we told investors was that we're really trying to find additional zones of uranium. So we already have one known zone of uranium at Gemini called the GMZ. And what we discovered was this parallel structure. It's about 300 meters to the east of the GMZ, and it really is wide open for exploration. So we haven't drilled any of that parallel structure yet. It's about 600 meters in strike level. It could host potentially, 1 to 2 uranium zones within it. And really, we don't know what those, potential grades could be. So the grades could be very different to what we're seeing at the GMZ. To the high side, for example. So it's very exciting. The parallel structure, the exploration hole, which was Gem 2275, was probably the best exploration hole our team had ever seen. So it had this huge hydrothermal alteration throughout. I mean, it was really impressive when it was coming out of the ground. We were all just sort of going, wow, this is amazing. And a big a graphitic structure in it. Of course, it had some uranium content in it as well. So basically it had all the key ingredients to have a uranium zone very close by. And as we know in the Athabasca Basin, you can literally be 5 meters away from 20% uranium. So drilling that hole has really given us a lot of indications where we're going to be drilling next. And, I think there's a lot of potential upside associated with that, but also directly north of the GMZ. We haven't really drilled that there yet either. And that also has potential. So there's a clear 280 meters north of the GMZ that needs to be drilled as well. So that's in the direct vicinity of the GMZ. And we're very excited by that. But we're also really excited by, this is a brand new trend in the Athabasca Basin, this discovery. So nothing has been drilled along this trend. We obviously know our neighbours to the south base load have a discovery there. But, there's still a 14-kilometre trend to the north as well that is wide open and yet to be explored. And as we know in the Athabasca Basin, the way these discoveries work is they come in a series of zones along a trend. So tremendous upside at Gemini, and we're pretty excited by that parallel structure. As I said, there has never been a better looking exploration hole. So it's got our team very excited.
Yeah, fantastic, Siobhan. And now you've touched a little bit on what you found, but what are the key findings from the follow-up drilling campaign at the Gemini mineralized zone?
Yeah, so we did do quite a bit of drilling along to the north, directly north of the GMZ, and that was really to work along the trend and see whether we could hit any additional zones. Unfortunately, that drilling didn't go necessarily the way we had hoped that it would go, but that parallel structure really has balanced the drilling as we went along north there. So still plenty of upside for additional zones. The drilling we did at the GMZ, that just demonstrated more continuity. We were able to extend the mineralization 50 meters down dip as well, which was great. And we still had a significant hole where we were drilling in the GMZ. It was 18 meters of 0.42% uranium, which is super high grade compared to the rest of the world. So that's 4,200 ppm, and you really can't complain about those grades. They're mining 500 ppm at Husab in Namibia. So massive amounts higher than what you're seeing in other deposits around the world. It is, I'm going to be frank, on the lower side for the Athabasca Basin, but that doesn't take away from the fact that this is still a fairly high-grade uranium deposit when you compare it to world standards.
No, absolutely. Now, Siobhan, just shifting focus a little bit to Sada Donmes, which you've just appointed as the Vice President of, exploration in the business.
Yes.
So we know he has a very strong background in uranium exploration and development, which you can touch on. But how has his appointment strengthened 92 Energy's team?
Look, Sada has been a fantastic appointment. We really threw him in the deep end on this program. So he'd only just started with us, and he very successfully ran this program, which was great. But I mean, it's really important to look at his history and his background. So he was 17 and a half years at Denison, and Denison, of course, have some very major projects in the Athabasca Basin. They're probably going to be one of the next developers in the Athabasca Basin, and of course, he was one of the leads on the ISR project. So ISR is a way of extracting uranium. It's kind of cutting edge innovation for the Athabasca Basin ISR application, and so he was part of that team. What that does is really changes the economics of the way some of these Athabasca Basin deposits work. So that's a fantastic skill set that we're able to tap into. But he also did the resource estimates for all of the Denison deposits as well. So that's a very handy skill set to have, as well as of course, his massive background in exploration and exploration discoveries. So he's really been a great person to have on board, and he's also a great guy. So that always makes things better as well, when you get a great hire that you get along well with. And so yeah, he's been a great addition to the team.
Oh, fantastic. So it sounds like he's got, the experience to sort of help kind of hold the company's hand through exploration through to development potentially, which is
absolutely,
yeah, fantastic. So now that you have Sada on, what are the company's plans for further exploration at the Gemini uranium project?
Yeah, so look, of course, we had that tremendous success with that hole which hit that parallel structure. So will be following up on that parallel structure. We're really keen to get back out there. Hopefully we'll be able to get back out there in the new year and start drilling again. We've got plenty of money in the bank to be able to facilitate that, which is fantastic. So really, we just got to get back out there, and we're waiting for the assay results. We'll use them to really build up a model and a plan for going forward, because of course in the process of drilling, there's so much going on that you don't really have time to take it all in. So it's nice to have these breaks to be able to really build up your exploration thesis and the way that you're going to drill things going forward. So it's nice to have a bit of a break, and we're looking forward to getting back out there soon.
Yeah, absolutely. A break to sort of recalibrate and re-strategize and kind of take in all of the work that you've already done to date. Now, I have a bit of a sort of maybe a little bit of a controversial question, but I would love to know, and perhaps if you could share with the Small Caps audience, how do you think, Gemini uranium compares to other uranium projects in the Athabasca Basin?
Yeah, so I think the biggest similarity for Gemini is the Eagle Point, Collins Bay, Rabbit Lake deposits, right? So the core looks very similar. The alteration looks very similar. The size of the original Rabbit Lake deposit, and the way that sort of looks, that actually had two parallel zones side by side. So that's potentially what we're looking at here. So that's very, very similar. And of course, that was mined very successfully over the years, and really is quite similar to what we're looking at now. Along that trend, they had, of course, over 220 million pounds of uranium, so in several different deposits, and again, that thesis can be applied with what we're looking at as well. So whilst this is on the lower end of the grade spectrum, this is a basement hosted uranium deposit with really substantial amount of upside going forward, and really looking forward to being able to get out there and continue to explore. So those similarities, and of course baseload to the south of us, they are into the same system as us potentially, and they've had a discovery similarly to us too. So that just shows the fertility of the system as you move along the trend, which is really encouraging.
Yeah, fantastic, Siobhan. Now, I know we sort of touched on this already in my earlier question, but, kind of just to round it out from a macro perspective, what role do you see nuclear energy playing in the future as the world's energy demands continue to increase?
So that's actually a fantastic question, because I think the role for nuclear is far greater than anyone realizes. And the reason I say that is because governments have, of course, been sort of a bit reticent to talk about it over the last sort of few years, and they've been talking about renewables. But really what we've seen in Europe with renewables and intermittent energy is that all it does is it raises electricity prices, and it causes havoc with the ability to actually have, consistent 24/7 baseload energy. Now, this is where nuclear comes in, and it does this in a very, very good fashion, right? It is energy. It produces zero carbon emissions. It's 24/7. Your energy security is actually quite substantial with nuclear energy, probably more so than any other energy source out there. And that's because, you're not relying on, for example, with coal, 80% of the cost of coal producing coal energy is from the coal itself. So the component that goes into nuclear energy, the fuel, is a much smaller component of nuclear energy. And of course, the nuclear power plants, they can run for, a very long period of time, 80 years. So that's the normal nuclear power plants that we're talking about. But there's also these smaller nuclear power plants called small modular reactors. And they're really fascinating because basically the cost of capital is far lower. And the really interesting thing is they can be sort of put in place where the coal stations are at the moment, just plugged into the transmission lines that are already there for a relatively low cost. And I think the interesting thing here is that when you talk about renewables, you have to upgrade the whole transmission grid to be able to rely on renewables. You don't have to do that for nuclear energy. So maybe there's a high capex cost from installing nuclear energy, but what we can see all around the world is those countries that have nuclear energy actually have a much lower cost of electricity than their counterparts around the world who don't. So this is what governments are looking at. They're looking at energy security, baseload energy, and they're looking at costs, and they're looking at all of these different things. And of course, nuclear fits it perfectly. So I think we'll see an explosion of it around the world.
Yeah, absolutely, Siobhan. I couldn't agree more. And I think, we're seeing an energy crisis globally, not just in Europe, but I mean, just look at South Africa. The grid is stuffed, but they have, a lot of opportunity to use nuclear energy and to leverage off of that because they have that existing infrastructure. So it's going to be really, really interesting. And the earlier question, our first question, touching on the market spot price of uranium surging. I mean, these are, again, reasons tying into why uranium price is higher now. So interesting.
Absolutely. Well, 10 years lack of exploration and development is really what's driving the uranium price at the moment. But also, so you've got that on the supply side, but you've also got, massive increases in demand. And the World Nuclear Association fuel report that recently went out significantly increased their base level demand for nuclear energy. And I think, small modular reactors, I think once the licensing process around the world is sort of established for them, you'll see them be rolled out very quickly. And, France decarbonized their whole electricity grid within a decade, 80% nuclear within a decade. So there's, naysayers out there that say, nuclear takes too long. Absolutely rubbish. If there's a will, there's a way, I think. And I think you'll start to see that around the world.
Yeah, and I actually think that governments are going to sort of be pushed into a position where they won't have a choice. It's like, we have an energy crisis globally. So anyway, the space, very interesting. You're obviously in the right commodity.
Yes.
Siobhan, I just have one last question, and that is, can you leave our small caps audience with 2 or 3 key takeaways as to why they should watch 92 Energy and potentially invest?
Look, I think we have massive leverage to exploration. We're already onto an extremely fertile system. We already have uranium endowment in the ground. And, we have this potential for additional zones along this parallel structure. So that's a very exciting place to be. And secondly, of course, the uranium price, I think we're at the very start of a uranium bull cycle. And I think it's going to be a long-term sustained bull cycle. We're not just talking like, a couple of months here. I think, this is going to go for quite a while. So you've got those 2 drivers. And of course, being on the exploration side, you're hugely leveraged to those 2 drivers. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is we're fully funded. We're really excited to get back out there and drill again. And, we've also got, which I haven't mentioned, a huge portfolio of other projects that we would love to get to. But, we just haven't had the opportunity to yet because of Gemini. So we're in the best jurisdiction in the world. We have uranium in the ground and we have a commodity price working in our favor. What's there not to like?
Brilliant. And on top of that, you have, technical expertise that can take you through from exploration through to development. So I think that's also a very strong message as well.
Absolutely. Yes. It's an exciting place to be, that's for sure.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Siobhan. Really looking forward to watching 92 Energy and the developments and getting you back on the show to have another chat.
Thanks, Jess.